Hi, and welcome to 2025. Happy New Year, and welcome to the Coach Barnabas podcast. My name is Corey. Thank you so much for joining me today. I want to jump right in. Let's do this. I wrestled all my life, growing up in particular, with insecurity. And maybe you can relate to that. Maybe you can identify. Maybe you can't. Maybe you know somebody who wrestles with that. I certainly did. I want to go into a little bit of my background to kind of explain some things and kind of talk about my road to overcoming it. Now, that doesn't mean I still don't struggle with it from time to time because there are just things in life where you kind of, you want to present yourself in a particular way, and you're looking, you're looking to others to affirm you, and it doesn't always work out that way. So I don't care who you are in life. I think we all kind of live our lives needing to make sure we're pleasing people, but we can be crippled by that, and that certainly was the case for me growing up. So to start, and I've shared this in previous episodes, but at the same time, for those of you who are new, you don't have that frame of reference unless you start at the beginning and start to move your way on. But for those of you who have been with me all along, I don't expect you to also commit everything I've said to memory. So for the sake of all of you, I do want to just back up and say that from a very young age, from about 5 years old, maybe even a little bit younger, I started to develop signs of vitiligo. And if you're not familiar with that, vitiligo is a skin condition where your skin has different pigmentation. Now, I'm of such an age that vitiligo has done about all to me that it can. I used to have very much darker skin than I do now. It has faded as a result of vitiligo. So you can't tell right now, especially in the dead of winter, when it's a little more obvious in the summer when still part of my skin can tan and other parts of my skin cannot. But the point is not to take you on this magical journey of vitiligo. That's not it. But to point out that even as I was starting school age, I was developing outward signs of something that made me different from everybody else. And, when you're starting school and you're around other kids and they're around other kids for really the first time in their lives, unless they had siblings, they're getting exposed to other people really in a social setting for the first time. So when they notice something a little bit different, it's easy to ask a lot of questions, uncomfortable questions, or tease you, mock you, whatever the case may be. That certainly was the case in mine. And that started the journey of my insecurity. The other night, weird. I haven't thought about this story in I don't know how long. I couldn't even tell you. But all of a sudden, I woke up like 3 o'clock in the morning. And there's another thing. Why is it always 3 o'clock in the morning? I don't know. But I digress. Woke up one morning, like 3 o'clock in the morning, and the brain starts spinning. No reason why. I wasn't stressed out about anything. I don't know. But the brain starts looking for things. And for whatever reason, my brain went back to this experience I had. It was during summer vacation. I was probably, 8, 9, 10 years old, whatever. And at summer vacation, and a buddy of mine from school calls me up one day and invites me to go with his family to the beach. And I grew up in California, so, that sounded like a great time. So, of course, I agreed, got my stuff together, and they picked me up, and off to the beach we went. While we were there, and this is, my buddy who called me we played sports together, we'd known each other, and so we were friendly, but not necessarily friends. So it was really kind of surprising to get that phone call. And he was, a very good athlete, very smart, good-looking kid, so he was very up here on the popularity scale. I was not so much. I'm not the most charismatic kid in the world, bit introverted. So he and I were very opposites in personality and everything. But during the course of our time together at the beach, he comes up to me and says, I just want you to know you weren't my first choice or even my second choice on people to call. And I don't know if he went beyond that. I just remember that he did make sure I was aware that I was at least plan C. if maybe not further down the line. Maybe he got through the Rolodex and got down to, my name alphabetically, which was, my first name's Corey, my last name starts with M. So maybe he got down to the M's and, well, shoot, nobody else can go, so let's call him. It's how it felt. And so there was kind of this sense of rejection, even in the inclusion. He calls me, hey, you want to join us? Yeah. But made it a point to let me know that I was down the list of those he really would rather have brought. So I thought of that the other morning out of nowhere, and it didn't make me feel depressed or anything. It's funny. Now, at the time, it was like, really? But that was just kind of I thought, an example of some of the stuff the kids do, excuse me, that can feed upon or fuel somebody's insecurities. It certainly did mine. But, again, I had my share of things that made me feel inferior to others and, insecure. And this festered and grew, and it came down to, trying to please everybody, trying to make everybody like you, comparing yourself to other people. And none of that is good. None of that is healthy. Now, being competitive, which I also was growing up, that makes it even tougher. All right. Cause you want to beat people, whether it's sports or games or whatever. But you also are trying to live up to certain expectations. You want to be in the in crowd. You want, excuse me, you want this, that, and the other. And, it can be a very complicated minefield to navigate. And it certainly was for me. Now, advancing into adulthood, insecurity reared its head when you get into the dating game. And, you're meeting people, and maybe you have an interest in somebody romantically. And I used to joke a lot because I was 48 years old when I met the woman who is now my wife. 48. So for 20 plus years or more, let's call it 30, right? From 18 to 48. Let's call it 30 years. You're trying to, you're meeting people, and maybe you're not thinking marriage, especially at 18, 19, 20 years old, not thinking marriage, but still, you're at college age, in your late teens and early 20s, and already people are coupling up, matching up, and, all this thing, and people were getting married, at, even at that age. And I'd see that happening, which, was fine. I wasn't really necessarily looking for that, but I was seeing that was already starting to happen. I was already going to weddings of friends of mine, classmates, and all that kind of stuff. So it was kind of my exposure into this. And as I got older and older, and it still was elusive to me, I began to joke about it, because what else can you do? And that's kind of my defense mechanism, is to make jokes. So I used to say, it's like, hey, look, I could marry any woman I please. And the punchline was always, I just can't seem to please anyone. So that was kind of the thing. But it was a joke, and I presented it as a joke. But at the same time, there was an element of truth to it, which makes the joke funnier, I suppose. But it was true. It's like, I could find relationships. I couldn't maintain them. I couldn't sustain them. They all fizzled out. And sometimes it was my choice. Sometimes it was not. And, that's not going to do much for the self-esteem. That's not going to do much for the insecurity thing. And again, skipping back to what I said, I was 48 years old when I met my wife. And the cool thing, and I'm just going to kind of zip to that part, is this is strictly on a horizontal level, horizontal relationships, all right? Not the vertical one between God and me. I'll talk about that in a moment. But just on a human level. When I met my wife, some of the things that were peculiarities about myself, whether it was my appearance, the effects that vitiligo had taken on me, and maybe just decades of feeling emotionally kind of beaten down and left over. You feel a little bit like if you go through the buffet line, the little bit of food or meat that's left behind that has been skipped over by people that pick it up and go, no, not that one, that's gross. Or, You go through the produce section, of a grocery store, and the only bananas left are the either super green ones or the ones that are all brown and bruised up. And that's a little bit how you feel. The older you get and everybody else has married off, sometimes 2, 3 times. And here it's been elusive for me, and just seems now to the point to where it's just not possible. It's not, let's just forget it and assume it's just never going to happen for you. And I got to that point more than once, because sometimes you get your hopes up and dashed against the rocks. But when I met my wife, the things that I had been insecure about physically, she actually was attracted to that. She liked her. To put it in perspective, one of her favorite musical artists as she was growing up was David Bowie, and she loved David Bowie. She loved his voice and all this other stuff, but she loved one of the peculiarities about him, and that he had mismatching eyes. She loved that. Thought that was the coolest thing ever, that his eyes didn't match each other. And so things like that, those little physical abnormalities, are not deformities, they're not, imperfections or anything like that. They're just unusual. They make you different. She was drawn to that. So that became something that actually attracted her to me, physically. Once we got to know each other, she appreciated that about me, and something I was insecure about was something she found attractive. And it helped me overcome some of that insecurity physically that I carried even into that stage of my life. At that age, it was still something, because it's been a lifelong companion, being concerned about my appearance, and something I couldn't control. Things that we tried all these different methods to try and overcome it or shield it or whatever, disguise it, tried it all. And nothing really proved to be long lasting. Anyway. But also, again, going back to my introverted nature, there were just things socially interacting, where I lacked security, and that sort of thing, lacked confidence. But at the same time, I found myself in different periods of my life. Everywhere I went, I ended up in some form of leadership, and which is odd, because I'm not a type A personality. I'm not somebody who looks for attention. I'm not somebody who's always looking to climb up whatever ladder there is. But I always ended up kind of being elevated into some role of leadership, which oftentimes I never even sought. So I don't know. I can't explain any of that. But going back now to the vertical relationship, at 18 years old, or maybe 17 years old, I was really introduced to God in a new way, in a way I didn't know growing up, in the type of church my parents and I were affiliated with. At 17 years old, they started going to a different type of church, and we'll just say a Protestant church. And that's where I really started getting introduced more into the character and love of God in a way that I'd never been exposed to before. Now, at first, and I've talked about this recently in previous episodes, I shut down, and I didn't really listen to sermons, and I wasn't really interested in learning about God. I was 18 years old, senior in high school, big man on campus, supposedly. So I just was in a different phase of my life in what was important to me, and so I would kind of shut that out. But as I've grown, eventually, as I grew in my relationship with God, I really began to accept that He loved me no matter what. And He made me the way I am on purpose. And so being accepted and loved by God, no matter what other people thought, no matter what I thought or saw in the mirror or whatever, that I recognize that my Bible says I was fearfully and wonderfully made. And that began to change my focus, my perception. And what I want to really leave you with in this episode is to recognize that, pleasing other people is just not, that's a moving target. some people are going to be pleased, some people are going to be unimpressed. Nobody cares. But when you change your focus and say, you know what, I just want to please God. I want to do whatever's going to make him happy with my life. I want to follow him. I want to make decisions that pleases God. I want to go where he wants me to go. I want to do the things he wants me to do. And even the things we think we're unequipped to do, and maybe this is a topic we'll dive into here in the near future, is God began to introduce myself to qualities that I possessed I didn't even know I had. I had tools in my tool belt that I didn't know what they were. I'd never even looked for them. I never explored them. And God began to just introduce me to these things, and I found something in myself that was always there that I didn't want any part of, but I started to develop not only an ability with these things, but a desire to use those tools. And who knew? I didn't. But it was through my vertical connection relationship with God that he began to show me myself from the inside out. And the more I concerned myself with pleasing God, the less I was worried about pleasing other people. And also, consequently, the more I was interested in pleasing God, the more I was able to actually connect with people, because again, God was showing me tools in myself that I possessed, I did naturally, that he designed in ingredients that he put in me that through my relationship with him, I got exposed to and began to really, in this podcast, what I'm doing right now, again, being an introvert, not being a type A personality and being uncomfortable sometimes in my own skin, that here I am doing what I love to do. And I think to a degree, what I was born to do, and that's to be an encourager. And that's the whole theme behind Coach Barnabas. If you know anything, if you've been with me from the very first couple episodes, I described where the name Coach Barnabas came from. But Barnabas was a figure in the Bible, one of the disciples, who was known as a son of encouragement. It was a nickname for him, Barnabas, because the people around him saw him as such an encourager that they literally nicknamed him Barnabas, and that became his persona, his name, and he lived up to it. So that's where Coach Barnabas comes from. And so this is what I love to do, is to take maybe unfortunate experiences from my life, things I've learned about myself, things I've learned about God, and maybe hopefully present them to you in a way that is relatable. And you can see and go, wow, I have some insecurities, or I have whatever issues that I'm dealing with. And if he can do it, I can do it. And so, that's what I want to leave you with, is dig in closer and just focus on pleasing God and saying, God, what can I do today that's going to please you, that's going to make you happy? Show me what my assignment is for today, and let me be inspired by that, challenge me, use me, and then let me be an encouragement to other people. Let me speak into their lives. Let me bless somebody today. And by doing that, not to get accolades, not to get attention, not to go on Facebook and say, hey, I did this really cool thing for somebody. Oh, aren't you wonderful? Not for that, but to say, you know what, for my audience of one, I want to please God. I want to obey what he has, what he tells me, follow his directive. And if nobody else in the world knows except for one person that life I touched in his name, then that's good enough for me, is just knowing I'm pleasing God. You know what? If you can narrow down your focus to one day at a time, one life at a time, he will provide the increase, okay, to where he will give you dreams and desires that you never knew you had, to touch lives and inspire, encourage people, bless them, and be a life changer, be a world changer. You can go from a life changer, one person at a time, to being a world changer, starting a movement. Who knows? And so I just want to encourage you with that. So with that, thank you again for joining me today. I hope, if you haven't already, I would love it if you would like and subscribe, maybe leave some comments, share some encouragement with me. Let me know if this touches you in some way, if you can identify with it in some way. Share it with somebody maybe who needs some encouragement and needs to recognize that they too are fearfully and wonderfully made. Even if the world sees us as imperfect and flawed, God designed us on purpose the way we are, and he can use it for his glory. And so I'm just thankful for that, and I try to live it out every single day. So thank you so much again for watching. God bless you. Be encouraged. Be an encourager. I look forward to talking again really soon. Take care now.